the recording.
Got it?
I got it on.
Yep.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So Brendan, last time we worked on payroll control construction, and we talked about two major areas that we really hadn't at all touched on. One of which I think I'm going to cover at the beginning because it's kind of a little bit easier, which is retro pay. And the other one is the rolling of the jobs and the budgeting for next year, which is kind of done in the same process, not the same time, but in the same process as well. So those are the two topics I'm going to cover. Unless there's something else specific that you feel I should cover again or cover more in more detail, that's what I thought I would focus on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that works.
Yeah, because in terms of everything we've done, we've gone through quite a bit of stuff. I just in this release, by the way, we just started working on Canadian because we're working now with the Canadian district. So you're going to start seeing things like this show up eventually. So unless you're very familiar with T4s, you don't have to worry about any of that. But we have to start worrying about that because we're doing a district in Alberta. So we have to get ourselves prepared. But the area that we want to talk about is under tasks. And both options are really under tasks for the most part. One, and they're really actually under the same section, actually, ironically. It's in this section called Salary Update / Budgeting. And we have retro pay worksheet there as well. It's kind of like, well, why is that there? Well, it's kind of a similar process as the update tool, so we kind of put it there. So I'm not sure what all this stuff, why they're all here, but they kind of make sense. The budget employees I'll go over in a little bit. That's related to the third option. But right now I'm going to focus on the retro pay worksheet. So retro pays are needed, as you know, from time to time for various different reasons. Primarily, we've found in sometimes, particularly in unionized states, there's bargaining that's going on with the teachers union, but they can't settle their differences, if you will, and school starts. So they're processed, let's say 1, 2, 3 checks, whatever, and finally the union and the school district come to an agreement, and finally they've agreed to a salary grade change, if you will. So really there's two things that need to happen. We need to update the employees' job records for future pay cycles and also pay them, if you will, a retro for the difference. So that's kind of what gave birth to the retro pay worksheet. We used to do it right off of the employee job record as well in case you were doing one person at a time, but people have found that really doesn't make sense, if you will. It's easier for us to maintain one part of the code. And so today, if we are doing a retro for one person, generally speaking, we still want you to do the retro pay worksheet. You'll just run it for one person. So that's kind of our thinking now is, as a training perspective, the retro pay worksheet is how we do retro pays. And ultimately what we're trying to get to is when we run the next payroll cycle, the retro is actually paid. And then the pay cycle is run, and then it knows it's paid it, and then it's done until somebody maybe does another retro. But other than that, it's done. I want to just take a quick journey. Let's find an employee that I can play with. And also I'll show you a screen I want to show you. So I'll pick this teacher. I always pick a teacher. It's always teachers that are my big problems in life. So let's go ahead and can't live with teachers, can't live without them. All right. So I've got Amy. I'll write Amy next to it. Make sure I pick up the right person. So in her jobs, she just has a bunch of jobs. You guys love jobs over there. This is, again, Perkins's, a backup of Perkins, right, as of a certain period of time. And we've got the teacher row. By the way, just so you know, we just added, and you'll be the next release, an hourly rate. So we're computing what her hourly rate would be based on the standard number of hours she works in a day. We're just dividing the daily rate by, she works 7.5 hours. That's what that'll turn into. So anyway, just thought you might find that interesting. So the area I want you to focus on, focus your eyes on, I'm going to actually close these tabs so you can focus even more, is this section really right here. So when we run the retro, what the system is going to do is it's going to go ahead and when we post it, and we do post a retro, it's going to go ahead and click that checkbox. You can't click that checkbox You can't click it. I'm trying to click it. Not clicking it. Nothing's happening. The last retro pay will now be updated with the amount. And the reason it says last retro pay is, yes, we know that's going to be the next retro pay, but as soon as it's processed, you kind of want to know what the last one was. So we're using the same field, kind of anticipation of you already processing the next payroll and processing it to completion. So we're calling it less retro pay, but think of it as next retro pay and then last retro pay. Nothing changes, it still stays there basically. It only gets overridden by a second retro to that same employee, which again, remember, each job is created for each year. So how many retros am I going to do for the same job for just that 1 year? Not many, right? So that's kind of why we left it the way we did. This field here will drill down and we'll show you the dollars that's been paid. So you conceivably you could have $500 here, and you could have $1,000 there because you processed a $500 previous value, and now you have another $500, which was the last one processed. But if you clicked on this, then the screen would pop up and would show you all the records that meet that criteria. The criteria being this teacher, this employee, that job, that start date, earnings bonus, in which retro pay is yes. And of course, there aren't any transactions. If I were to click this one off, then data would show up. This is the regular pay that she's been paid. And I'm going to write that number down because I'm interested in that 312103 right now. Okay. So we're going to take this all the way to conclusion, if you will. So we're going to go ahead into the retro pay worksheet now. And we are going to do it just for one person, but I will talk to you a little bit through it in terms of how you do it for multiple people. So the retro pay worksheet opens up. It's an empty screen. There's nothing in there at this point. You don't insert records. You have to suggest them, basically. So we're going to go ahead and suggest retro lines. We can pick employees. We can have a retro start date. So the retro start date is important because the system is trying to compute the amount of salary that the person should have got. Example where kind of a shame, but on a standard salary grid, then what happens is that you would normally go back to your grid and put in a date, let's say of 7/1 or 9/1 or whatever the new rates that was just negotiated. So the system is going to automatically figure out what should have been paid versus what was paid. Okay, it can't really do that now because you're not really using a salary grade, but if you were, then you would get those benefits. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to 0701. I'm going to go ahead and say manual and percent. I could do a percent increase. Let's just do a percent increase. So we decided to give her a 3% increase, and I'm going to go ahead and put in AD1370, which should be Amy. And I'm going to hit OK. And it's actually bringing up all her jobs, right? And it's maybe not what I want to be doing. So I'm going to actually close that out and delete all that and try it again because I can filter for jobs as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put in teacher. Oops, sorry. You got to fill this information in each time. So I'm going to do a percent. I'm going to go 3%. Got that employee, got a teacher. All right, now why is it giving me 2 records? It's giving me 2 records because we haven't blocked the old jobs, which again, I guess I can filter for that. Let me just kind of bring up the employee's card. Let me just click on here. Normally jobs are blocked, so let me just confirm that those jobs aren't blocked. Teacher. Yeah, see, it's not blocked because right now we're doing blocked equals no. So these jobs from last year shouldn't be here. You know, maybe they've been blocked in the real database. I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and block them and rerun it. I'm just trying to follow normal flow, and I'm getting results I don't expect. You see, it just disappeared. I'm going to go ahead and block it, and as soon as I hit OK, it'll disappear. No, payroll dates overlap with the same job. Okay, let's take a look at that. The system doesn't allow you now to start here. And see how you're overlapping? Do you see that, Brenda? 819 is picking up, but you're ending on 831 for the same teacher code. So the system is becoming very, very less tolerant on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that What was that date again?
8/19. And Brenda, and Andrew, where that's coming in is because of the change we made on the budgeting side that says you want to block these jobs on post,
Mm-hmm.
and it's unblocked because they wanted to go ahead and set the new jobs up. Well, so then what happens is it doesn't block the old job. When the new job is posted out there, then you have to manually go out there. You have to move the default job and block all the old jobs. And so then that's what's causing this. So I don't know that that's a good practice.
I don't think so either. Normally, we've always blocked the jobs because we create the new jobs between the last cycle and the first cycle, perfectly. So we immediately block them all. And I know, but again, you still can mass block them, right? I mean, so you still have a periodic activity to allow you to go and mass block them. But
Right.
Either way, I mean, they're basically saying, look, we don't want to support having overlapping for the same job for various different reasons, and there's probably many reasons why that's probably not a great thing to allow.
But even if you mass block them, then now you don't have a new default.
When you say new default, because
well, the default is blocked.
You mean because it's not active yet? Is that what you mean? I guess I'm not following you. What you're saying?
Well,
really.
if you had created the new job,
mm-hmm.
and both of them are sitting out there, well, the old job or the one that's currently being paid up through 8/19 or whatever
mm-hmm.
is currently the default job.
Right.
But when you go in and block it, well, now you don't have any default jobs.
Well, and beyond that, you can't actually pay anybody anything, right?
And so,
but if you were to actually block them after, let's say you create them ahead of time. I'm not arguing that part, but what I'm saying is that when you finally get to the point where you really have, from a chronological perspective, physically crossed to now into the next year for that new job.
Right.
That's when you should just say, hey, now it's time to go block those jobs, right? I mean, that's the time it really counts. But either way, try not to have them overlap. We don't want dates overlapping. But let's continue on. I just want to see what the system did. Well, the system is calculating a old pay rate. So old pay per amount was just 312103. Yes, I'm sorry.
You just broke up. You need to
I did?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we've been having a little bit of internet connectivities all around everywhere, it seems like. Dan, I know, is having some. I'm having some. All I'm saying is that when I created this record, let me just kind of delete it again and suggest I've got it for this one employee for the teacher job, 070115. I'm saying do a percent increase because I can't really do a step type algorithm because we're not using the grade and step system in this particular database. But if you are, it will automatically. You don't have to do that. You just can literally just say do it by step. You don't have to increase the steps, and it still will give them an increase if the grid is higher than the old grid was. The system will figure all that out for you. Creates the record at that point, tells you what job it is, salaried, and so forth. It shows you the old amount, old contract limit, the old pay period amount, the new rate, and the new contract limit, the new pay period amount. It sees a retro amount per cycle, and the problem is it doesn't see any cycles, and I think it's getting confused. I'm not sure why. Let me see if there's any other actions. No other actions. So cycles paid to date. That's probably right, Brenda, because thinking about it, I probably don't have any salary that's been processed, have I? Let me see. Let me go back and look at this and look at the dates, because I'm not really focused on exactly what happened on this employee. So let me just kind of take a look. All right, so we got her. We got the jobs. We do have a paid to date amount, don't we? Oh, sorry, teacher. Yeah, it's $28,000. Oh, okay. So I picked 7/1/15, which was goofy because nobody's paid it. Let's just pretend it was a retro as of 11/01, right? So if we say 11/01/14, let's hope it's what the system figures out. It says, you've got 5 cycles that you've processed. And so the difference between 3121 and what it was coming up with times 5 cycles should be the retro amount. So let's do it as of 11/1. Sorry, I haven't really done this in a while myself, so I'm a little out of practice. So let's go to retro worksheet. Let's go ahead and delete. Let's go suggest. Let's go 11/01/14. Let's go percent. Let's go 3. And let's say go. And let's go to the end now. And see that it did calculate 5 cycles. That $93 is simply going to be this pay period amount of 3214 and the 3121. So the system has calculated 93.63 that they did not get paid. They should have gotten paid over 5 cycles, and the retro amount is 468.15, which is editable. I can edit that. This retro worksheet can be used. Sometimes you just are given a sheet of paper. And so all you have to do is just suggest the right rows here and just fill in those amounts and then just process. So that's another way that you can actually take care of that. So for the most part, we do have a test report that I believe we wrote. I'm not sure what that does, so we'll just take a look at it. And we'll go to page preview and get it to be zoomed because otherwise I can't see it. And I think it just basically gives you the information. It just tells you what the total retro amount's going to be. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so then the last step really is to post. When we post, we'll see what it does. So let's go ahead and post it. It should say it's posted successfully, which it doesn't, but I guess it was. So we'll assume it was posted successfully. And we're going to prove it ourselves because we're going to go to the jobs. We're going to go to the teacher job. And we're going to go close that fast tab, open up the pay fast tab, and we're going to see this checkbox is now checked with that amount loaded in it. So that's now ready to be paid, but you can see there was no retro pay paid. I'm going to go ahead and process the next payroll on this guy. So I just want to kind of look to see what payroll's next. 115, and these are 70 months basically. So I need to do the 131, the end of January 1. So I'm going to go back to payroll now. We're going to go back to processing that we all know how to do because we've been thoroughly trained on this whole area. And we're going to come in here and type in our AD 1370, which is Amy. Pay cycles, I'm going to go ahead and change this now to the 131 cycle, and I am going to just, resort and clear and all my normal stuff I like to do. So let's see if it works right. I'm not so sure it did. So the amount is correct. One thing we did not look, by the way, at is we did not look at the person's job. So we looked at the job for the retro, but I kind of went so fast that I did not have you look at the fact that the compensation was changed. So I just want you to know that the system changed the pay rate, changed the contract limit, and changed the pay period amount. All those were changed. Not sure if it were recorded a change log entry. Let's just kind of take a look and see that. Is today, what day is that? That's not today, no. No, I don't think it does. Well, yeah, it does. I'm sorry. Yes, it does. There they are right there. So, yeah, so all that is recorded. So just want you to show that all that got recorded from a change log perspective. Very good. Everything's beautiful. The problem is that you had a problem. So why do we have a problem? What happened? I don't know. Let me think. Retro pay. So I'm trying to think about why it didn't kick in. Because in that payroll journal, I don't see the retro pay. Anybody see the retro pay? No, I don't see the retro pay.
There's a separate earnings code in there for retro.
Yes, and so the question
it may not be in the calc order.
Well, that's what I'm wondering exactly. So that's one thing that we need to look at is there's a option called Earn Retro. And what I don't remember, though...
It's not in the control calc order or the control group.
Right, but my question, though, is how does that work? What are the steps on it? I just want to take a look at the calc method, now that we're professionals in all these calc methods. Aha, there we go. Okay, I couldn't remember myself. Okay, so that's what it does. Amount is retro. I think this tells me, though, that it probably may only be able to do one retro at a time, may otherwise return an error. Meaning if there's two jobs for the same employee getting retro all at the same time, what would happen, right? I'm not positive I know the answer to that question myself, but I'm going to look at some code real quick to try to figure it out. And I'm not really finding what I thought I'd find, so let me just kind of just search for the word retro. Mount is retro. Okay, there's a function called retro calc. I think that would be helpful for me to quickly look at that. Payroll job, retro process. No, it does. It looks like it creates a separate record for each one. So if you had two going there, it would create two. Okay, that's fine. So what you need to do, Brenda, is in this case, this is real important, probably all of them are not configured to do retro properly, is that you need to get earned retro both in the master calc order and in the control groups for all the employees. To review, we're going to do just that right now. We're going to go to payroll, we're going to go to administration, we're going to calc orders, we're going to the master calc order, and we're going to navigate to the controls, and we're going to figure out where we want it to go. And generally speaking, I don't care where you do as long as it's part of the earnings. I'll just put it right below here. Earn retro. Okay, hit escape, let it do its thing, come back, then we do a control group. We want to put it in our master. Okay, insert new, I'll go earn retro, it'll find it, and as I click on here, I'm blanking this out, blanking that out. I don't think we need to auto-activate. It doesn't need to be auto-activated. I'm going to go ahead and tab and just hit F5, let it resort, just make sure it's still there. Earn retro looks great. It's not activated. Next step, as we've taught you before, is we're going to go ahead and create a new temp group. Well, I misspelled temp. No, I got my temp right. I'm going to go ahead and put earn retro in there as well. Okay, blank these guys out. Don't auto-activate. Be careful with that. Okay, once that's done, then we're going to go hit F5, see the one control. That looks great. Then we're going to go to our tasks, and we're going to pick up this task called Attach Control Group to Employee. We're going to go ahead and click on temp, which is already set to. Everything else is set. So I've got it set to temp, so I've always been using temp, I guess. So all this really does at this point is just copies it to the X number of employees in this database, blocked or unblocked, creates them. So if they come back, then it's already set up. And the little dialogue went behind me, but now I brought it back up. Very good. So last step I like to do is just a house cleaning, is I like to take my control group and I like to kill it out. I just don't like to have it sit there. Otherwise, you will see what I've done. And I'm trying to hide my steps. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't like to leave it there. So at this point, I feel more confident. I'm not saying 100% confident, but pretty darn confident that I can just come into this, calc single employee, and I'll resort. And voila, nothing happened. I don't think nothing happened. Let me just do a calculate again. I don't think this will do anything different. Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to try one quick thing real quick and just do a what's it called? Trace. But as you can see, I don't have trace as an option. Do we remember why trace is not an option? Anybody on this call that's been listening somewhat to me? Why is trace not an option on my calculate right there in Perkins in Dev? No answers? Because it's not set up in the user side. It's a user setup. So I'm going to go to AVF underscore my user, and I'm going to go in and turn on allow payroll calc trace. Because I don't know what's going on right now, so I just want to figure it out. Payroll processing, payroll journal, calculate, and there it now starts to show up. Or retro. I guess it doesn't do a lookup there. And then actions, view trace. Yeah, it looks like to me it didn't copy over or something. You know what I think it is, Mr. Dan, you there anymore?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I think it does need to be auto-activated. I think it needs to be activated. What do you think? You think that's the reason?
Well, that'd be my next guess.
Yeah, it'd be my next guess too. I think it does have to be activated because Earn Con Sal is activated probably, and I believe Earn Retro has to be. So I think that's my problem. I think we're gonna have to redo that. I think I have to change my answer to that. Where I told you not to activate it. I think that was wrong. In fact, I know it was wrong. All right. This time I'm confident, and the third line will now appear, and there she goes. Okay, so now that we have that finally there, one thing that I want to show you, Brenda, is that there's a hidden column on here called Paycheck Description. I think it's called Paycheck Description. Yes. I'm going to go ahead and add that and move it up. I'm going to show you what it's for. Da-dee-dee-da-dee-da. I don't want to go that high up. Wherever. All right. So this is what's going to show up on the check. So if I were to change that, then it would show up. But what it does is it takes the paycheck description off the payroll job, and it adds space, open paren, retro, close paren. It does that automatically. The reason we do that is that we buffer by that check description, so that when we print the check, and I pick the bank account, which I need to do, and we'll just go PDF. It shows up like that. And that's the purpose of it, is to make sure we buffer it separately because they need to see it separately. So they now see their higher teacher amount because they know the retro is happening. Trust me, they'll know about it. And secondarily, they see the actual retro amount, which is for the previous pay cycles. And that concludes, once I post it, let's just kind of post this guy out. So I'm switching him to a manual check, so that's actually not going to allow me to do that. So let me go ahead and void this real quick. Void all checks, thank you. And I'm going to switch this to a manual check and just type in just some number. I don't care what it is. I'm going to post it. I'm doing this because I'm going to actually, to save time, put AD71370. I want you to see what the job looks like after you actually post the payroll with the retro. And it's posting. First post always takes a while because it's caching all that code. That's why it takes a long time. If I did another one, it would be instant practically. All right, so I'm going to payroll, employees, jobs for Amy, teacher job for Amy. Okie dokies. And we're going to go look at pay. We see now retro paid. So the retro to be processed is turned off. Last retro pay, paid. So if I click on just generally paid to date amounts, this 31, you'll see now the retro amount. Okay, you'll see that. So that's kind of what it would look. But again, if I drill this separately, you would just get that one record, which is kind of obvious. Yeah, so that's retro pay. I guess one of the things that we could think about doing is I probably should put these guys here, maybe over here in these fact boxes. I'm not sure why I have them here. That's a design issue. Okay, so that concludes retro pay. I'm going to move over to salary update. Unless, Brenda, you have any specific questions about retro pay. Did that seem fairly straightforward after I went through? And
that was really nice. That was pretty slick.
Yeah, it's very, very slick. People love RetroPay. They're always like, anytime, like Linda lately has been saying, oh, I ran RetroPay at some districts. They loved it, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what other systems are doing in this area. So I always assume we're just kind of like fair to Midland,
Andrew?
But, yes.
This is Linda.
Yeah, Linda, how you doing?
Good. Hey, I had a question about it. So I can run this for somebody that has never been paid. Like it's the first pay.
Yeah, you could. In other words, yes. In other words, I had that conversation the other day with a starting person who had a few days kind of quote unquote in the previous cycle. But
right, I have that a lot.
A lot, yeah. So you then set up their job. You want it to be just like their normal amount. You don't want to do something weird, right? So yeah, just simply go in and just do a retro, and that's it. And the only thing that's the reason I showed you that description, that paycheck description,
right.
Because you may want to just say, well, I don't want to say retro because it's not really a retro. Maybe I would say prior period period, or maybe just a ADJ or something, whatever. Because whatever, you can just override that word retro. We do it automatically as it dumps it in, but you can then edit it before you actually cut the checks. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But yeah, people have been using it a lot.
Yeah, that will be helpful.
But Matt,
Yeah.
for it. Yep.
Hello? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I never knew how to use that, and I always seen it on there, and I never knew how to use it. So.
Yeah, the key thing is you can't do what I did, which I'm going to go back to my calc order now that I've been thinking. Not that I'm going to necessarily use this database, because to us these are just throwaway databases. But in the calc control, no, not this one. Hold on, what am I looking at? Right. Yeah, right here, right? No, what am I looking at? It's actions. Calc orders, master calc order, navigate, define, yeah. Am I missing columns or something? Where's my auto activates?
It's in the
Control group.
Control group.
Right. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Yeah. I can just tell I'm tired. Yeah, not thinking straight. But I want to go back to my earn retro because I just want to make sure everybody realizes that this should have been checked because you really need that to be automatically on, which means that every payroll, there's a moment in time where the payroll calc is thinking about whether there's a retro. But the problem is because I didn't have that auto activated, I didn't even go and think about it. And so you do need to think about that and have that turned on. I think the reason we don't turn earn cont sal on is because it, if you will, comes up automatically, if you will, by the action of onboarding somebody onto a job that has earn cont sal, it activates automatically. Or if you do an hourly job and it's tied to earn reg, it activates it automatically. So that's why they're not auto-activated, but there's no action that would turn on the earn retro. So you might as well have it auto-activated on. It takes up a little bit extra time in the payroll process, and who cares? At the end of the day, it needs to be on. So what I really should do, I'm not going to do it, is go set up another temp one. And, well, let's just do it, because I'll tell you why. There might be a little bit of an interesting part to do it. I'm going to come back into this guy and put earn retro in again. Okay, and I am going to blank these guys out, but I am going to auto-activate this time. So I just wanted just so you know that when I go back to my task and click back on this guy, there's an option here, which is skip existing controls. So if I were to run this right now, it still wouldn't get activated. For me to get it activated, I need to click on that update. And now I am doing it. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to prove, hopefully, that that works perfectly fine. I'm going to go back to my administration control groups, and I'm going to delete the temp just to get it out of there. But I'm going to go ahead and test one employee other than the employee I've been working on, because that should be, somebody else. Just pick Amy and navigate to their controls, which are right here. And I'm going to go to earn retro and see that's checked. So I just want you to see that that's kind of how that works, in that you have to have that update on. If you had that skip, it would not have changed that flag for me, and that would have been a problem because you wouldn't have achieved your results. So just want you to understand that. Okay, good. So that really, unless we have other questions.
Andrew,
yes.
At what point does the system consider the number of cycles for tax purposes?
Well, when you say tax purposes,
I know there's somewhere in the system that it will annualize out, the tax.
Well, you're talking about for, I think, what we call, and that might be a great other training session, is a contract payout situation.
Oh, okay. That's
yes.
What it is. That's right.
Yeah, we have a lot of sophisticated sort of logic that we run to try to figure out how to take somebody who's paid over, if you will, 10 months, in which they're paid the rest of their contract out. In other words, they're paid what I call a 10-12. They work over 10 months. They're paid as if they're being paid over 12 months. But when they get to the end of the 10 months of working, instead of getting paid during the summer, they're paid inside the fiscal year in a lump sum. So I do find that creates new challenges from a taxation perspective, which is what Dan's referring to. Yeah. And we do have some sophistication on how to solve that, so it can still be done. Most districts run 5 or 4 separate checks. They just run a check, they do them, and then they run another one. That's a lot of processing. And we are able to do under one check and still get the net pay to basically be equal to 4 times their normal net pay, which is what they're trying to achieve, of course, as opposed to, giving them a huge tax burden because the things they're making a lot more money than they are because our tax system annualizes it. I found out in Canada it's all 10% like flat tax systems. They use a flat tax system, so they don't have that problem in Canada. So it's a U.S. construction that creates that problem. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next section, which is this whole update budgeting tool, if that's okay. Any other questions by anybody before I move on? Okay, good. The budget employees, I'm not going to heavily get into that. It's basically, it looks like somebody set somebody up there, which is good. And I just had to think about how it works myself. Allocation to other auth info. So really what it's meant to do would be kind of like a mini, and I say mini in bold and italics, a mini position control system, so that when you run this next bit of functionality in what I call the budgeting, for purposes of budgeting, as opposed to purposes of rolling the jobs, because again, the tool is used for both reasons. When it's being used only for the budgeting purpose, the question is, do you want to allow for some budget dollars to help you in your general ledger side for people that are coming on board for positions that are being created, vacant positions, if you will. So there's 5 new positions being created in the district next year, and they're not filled yet. They won't be filled until the summertime, but you're in March, and you got to figure this out in March. You can create budget employees, and then the system will incorporate that in the budgeting process. It's kind of what for, and I'm not going to go much more deeper into it. I do know that you do have an allocation detail that you have to set up, pretty standard, pretty much like any other employee or job, if you will. You have the budgeted annual salary, so you may say, I think it's going to be $60,000. Budgeted start date, 09, 01, 15, that kind of thing. It's going to probably be a full-time equivalent, so forth and so on. But down here, the other auth info, this is where you fill in information so the system can try to figure out maybe what the expenses are going to look like. But I'm not sure how it would work in Ohio because a lot of your retirement's based on rates. And we didn't envision rates being used. When we built this, it was kind of built in a model that most of the stuff that was employer-based was driven by other authority info. So you kind of guess, I think there'll be a younger person, they'll probably be single, they won't be family, so this will be their expense. That's the concept of what you're trying to do there. So anyway, I won't go into too much more detail with that. But so I'm not going to really train much on that. It hasn't been heavily used, so my suspicion is there probably is things I need to do to it. We haven't heard about it, so or at least I haven't. So now we're going to the payroll salary update budgeting tool. I'm going to go ahead and kind of explain some of these buttons here, and then we'll kind of work through some of this stuff, maybe using our same employee that we've been practicing with, Amy. So here we've got batches. The first thing to recognize is that we do have multiple batches, and we also have fields even in the batch setup. So just like in the payroll journal, here you have batches as well. And the reason you have batches primarily is for either the budgeting process and or the roll process, it may be beneficial to segregate by class code, let's say. Maybe I want all my teachers together, and then I want all of my bus drivers together, or maybe it's by job. I'm going down to the supplementals versus the, doing the teacher jobs versus the admin jobs, whatever. So usually people have some rhyme or reason as to why they create separate update names or payroll salary update names. Think of them as batch names. It was called payroll salary update. That's what the process was called. We've kind of added the budgeting part later on, so it's gotten a little unclear, but basically it's like batches. My count will clear. Looking into the calc orders, I'll explain in a second why that's important. Well, actually all of these are Oh my gosh, look at that. Nobody tells me these things. Look at that. You guys see that I misspelled a word right there? Bill, you listening?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
That's yours. Just not like a little abbreviation or something there.
No, that's flat. That's just literally just dyslexia. You see where it says FALT?
Yep.
That's flat. Apply FTE to flat amounts. I mean, I know what I was trying to do there. That's why I know it was flat. So if you could maybe quickly put a change order there and fix apply FTE to fault amounts to flat amounts. I'll give you the reference to the table. You're going to need the table reference. The table reference is 3708-5513, and the table's called Payroll Staff. Just this information. You just write that down real quick. I'll just hold. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Nobody saw that during our testing. So do you have that already?
We all have this. Yeah, we have all the same dyslexia you do.
I know. Believe me.
Okay.
All right, good. So anyway, so that'll say flat. But what this is, let me explain what this is just to kind of set up the concept. So when you're calculating the budget for next year for an employee, the problem relates really to how much does the system budget for the expenses, for the stuff below net pay, for the employer-paid health, employer-paid retirement, Medicare, FICA, and any other employer-paid benefits. The system has to be thought through and configured and so forth in such a way that it gets you at least close to the right answer. And again, budgeting is not payroll, meaning that it's getting close is still good enough. Where in payroll you need to be more exact. So in this area, we have a lot of things to have to consider. Think about it in the sense of just the Medicare and FICA. Well, the Medicare and FICA basis is limited by possibly a tax total. If they make over $115,200, I don't know what the total really is. For FICA, it stops at 6.2, but really doesn't for. For FICA it stops. For Medicare, it also has a higher rate if it goes over 200,000. So you got that. You also have the fact that they have possibly pre-tax deductions, and the pre-tax deductions reduce the basis, and so that's a concern. So these are all different concerns, if you will. So. And then on the retirement's fairly easy because it's usually a percent, so that's pretty much not that difficult, but still it's something to consider. But bottom line, the system generally has to have knowledge of the pre-tax deductions, and then of course has to have knowledge of the expenses. And so that's where that calc order comes into play. The process can take a while to process because what it's actually doing is it's going through a payroll calculation. It literally is rerunning the payroll calc for a time period of, in the future. I'm going to explain that in a second. And when it does it, it's coming through and looking at brackets and all kinds of things that you might have put in to reflect what you think the rates are going to be for medical and other things next year. Because remember, you're in maybe February doing this for July of next year. So it's quite a complicated exercise to sit there and model and try to figure out what you think the real expenses are going to be. But suffice to say that if you do it right and you guess correctly what the health care benefits are going to be for whatever, and you run it, and the person is family plan or parent plus child or whatever, it will compute the right amount. One thing it also needs to understand, though, is that it needs to know that the deduction that the system computes is a flat amount. In the payroll control setup, if I'm on a AC medical or I'm on the pre-tax deduction, and that's just as important, I need to flip the checkbox that says flat amount based. And again, just to kind of reiterate, I'm going to come back to this screen. I just want to reiterate this for anybody on this call, that in our payroll control, okay, and I'll take AC Dental as an example, we have under the K-12E part, I believe, oh no, we don't anymore. Yeah, so we've actually changed this now. It's actually sitting in the in a step. So now we have a new step that we've added. Sorry. And it's right here. So you would add another step on here to get this to work. And I'm going to go to advanced now because I don't remember the step name myself. So I'm going to just cheat and go function 2000 and higher. And I'm going to go here because I know it's towards the bottom. Oh, look at that. It's the very last one we did. Amount is amount multiplied by cycles entered by the user, either in the salary update or in the encumbrance functionality. This step works for both encumbrances and salary updates to compute expenses. So you need to have this step sitting at the bottom of any control that you've deemed falls within this conversation. Because if the system is running a salary update, and I'm realizing now it's probably the contract payout needs to be looked at, and I think it already does it for the contract payout, or the encumbrance system. The system is being told by the user how many cycles to consider. And so if you're in the encumbrance, it might be the number of cycles left in the year. If you're in a contract payout, it might be 4 or 5 cycles. If you're here in the budgeting tool and you generally are running, let's say, a semi-monthly, the answer is 24. Okay? And so let me kind of go back to that screen. I'm going to go ahead and save that. But let me go back to where we were. And I'm somewhat getting to the worst part of this thing right at the beginning, which I know I'm probably confusing you. But so in this batch, if you put a calculation order here of just the earnings, the pre-tax deductions, and the expenses, that's all you really need. The reason we do this, by the way, is for performance reasons, for speed. Why have wage attachments? You know what I'm saying? Why bother with them if, in fact, they have no meaning for budgeting expenses and wages? This is used based on that step to multiply the result, because remember, when the system processes the payroll, think about it, it's just returning, if it's a flat amount, it just returns one amount of that. What we're trying to do is to make this a budget for the whole year. So you got to multiply it by something. And then right here, what we're doing is we're saying, do you want to apply the FTE to those flat amounts? And so that's the FTE of the default job, or this job that you're on. And I can't remember exactly why I would have done that one, so I'm going to just bypass that for now. But anyway, so those are kind of setups that you would do. In this, once you have the batches set up, the general construct of this is that we get the current jobs, we create new rates, and we'll skip longevity pay right now. And really, quite honestly, you know, if you're doing the budgeting, you calculate the budget expense, you create budget journal lines, else you post. So if you're doing budgeting, you're never posting because you're not rolling the jobs. The post is what rolls the jobs, and that we don't want to do, except, as Dan and I are talking about, really right at the beginning of the next payroll for the next year, if you will. But in February or March, I'm doing the budgeting. So generally I'm going to get the jobs, create new rates, calculate the budget, post the budget to the journal lines where I can separately post them to the general ledger, or not. Maybe I'm just calculating the budget expense and analyzing it at this point. So again, it's really ultimately multiple reasons why people are in here. Let's go ahead and get current jobs. When I do this, it asks you a lot of questions, but basically, and again, I'm going to go back to my employees I'm going to put her in right now just so I can go to her real quick. I'll delete this record. Okay, well, I don't think it allows me to. I think I got to put her teacher down. Can I go off this record? No, it still needs something. Start date. Well, I don't know what her start date is. Yeah, let's just skip this. What I'm trying to figure out is what is her dates right now, because I don't want to overlap myself, and I'm doing next year now. So, all right, so she's running. Oh, that's not the right person, sorry. Okay, so we're looking at 8/19 to 8/30/15. Okay, that's fine. All right, payroll tasks. Date, get. Start date, I'll say, is 8/31/15. It's calculating an end date, which is fine. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with all that. I mean, I don't care about that. Include block jobs, I'll say no. I won't include block jobs. Block old job on post. So this is, I guess, what Dan was talking about. Normally, actually, the way the program used to work, it always blocked the job upon post. That's the only mode we knew. So in this case, I'm doing, let's say, just budgeting. But so now you can go ahead and indicate it in the front end, and then it flips a flag. And so if you don't want to block it, then it won't. So we'll go ahead and then these guys here, they're all values that are coming from the payroll job, not the employee job, but the master record. And, particularly like the days per year. The master record says 188, and this year it's going to be 187. So do you want all of these records to flip to 187? Well, then click that button, and it will do that, and so forth. If you don't reset the hours per year, I think it'll still calculate it based on the days per year. So the hours per day is 6 hours. It'll get a new days per year and then multiply it all out for you. But if you do want to reset it, you can reset it. Expected months and so on and so on. You get the idea. Normally, about the only one that you typically do want to do is that one. Okay. Which employees do you want? Do you want to pay class? What do you want? I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to my same guinea pig. Okay. And jobs. So I'm going to go ahead and just work on her teacher job. Except I'm going to spell it correctly. All right. Okay. Pops up a record similar to what you just saw. And that's why I started with RetroPay, is that it's actually similar. But let's go ahead and first look at it before we click the next button. So here we're going ahead and saying there's the new job. This is all about the new job. It doesn't really tell you the old job. It's really about the new job. Hours per day, days per year, hours per year. All this stuff here with this schedule stuff, again, we're not using the grid system, at least currently in Ohio, but normally you would be able to automatically come up with the new rates from a grid system. That is clearly the way you want to run the system, because then the system is automating this whole process. But forgetting that for a second, it's coming up with 3214, which is our higher number, remember, because we did that retro pay, which is okay. Allocation's the same, so forth. It's all the same. And the new rates are all blank. That's the key thing here to understand. The new rates are blank. It expects us to go to the next option now, which is create new rates. Okay, I can do it by step, which won't apply to you guys because, again, you're not using the grade step system. But if you were, I could do percent, which I will do, and I'll just say 3%. At least I thought I would, 3%. Yeah, there it is, 3%. Copy additional pay. So if you are using additional pay, then it's important to click that. If you click on refresh additional rates, then the system will go back to the default rates for department head and things like that. So the example there is that we pretty much follow a very standardized approach. So all department heads get paid an additional $3,000, and this year they're getting $3,200. So wouldn't it be nice to just go to a master record somewhere and say $3,200 and refresh that? That's what those two checkboxes would do. If you click the first checkbox and not the second one, then no matter what the employee had before, they'll have again. So that's kind of your choice in how you want to do that. The source for the new pay schedule. So when you're computing the pay schedule, do you want me to find the payroll job, the master record, which you may have changed and now it's using a different schedule? So you redefine the job and it's using a different pay schedule. The system can automatically switch that. That can be a problem if the grade also needs to be changed. You may have a problem with that. So, sometimes you have to just manually intervene with some of this stuff. One thing to note is that once you do manually intervene, it's now set in the employee job for next year and then is there for the following year. So occasionally people change their structures and it requires a little bit of manual entry. We'll go ahead and not worry about that because you pick percent anyway. Update which lines. I can do them in different sets because I might have different answers to different sets within the same batch. That's why these filters are there. We'll go ahead and do that. So now we're getting actually a problem that's a real problem. I'm glad we got that problem. The system is requiring that it can find pay cycles. It's doing that because it's just running certain kinds of validations, and it needs to be able to look at certain things, primarily figure out how to get to the pay period amount from the pay rate. And it can't do that because you don't have cycles all the way out that far. So you may get that. It's not a problem at all. Set your new pay cycles up. So go up into, as we've done many times in our training, we'll go to pay cycles, which I have to find. There we go. Semi-monthly, we go to navigate to the terms. Okay, this one, we've got it there, but we haven't generated it for some reason. I'm just going to look at this one and see where it ended. I see it ends on 6/30/15. So this one I will just simply generate from 07, no, not there. I don't think I pick any of these. These are all, yeah, just here. That's all I have to pick. 07/01/15. All right. All right, should be good. Should be good. Should be good. Okay, so now it should be able to figure it out. So let's kind of go back to our tasks, back to the payroll update worksheet, back to the create new rates. It's got everything in there that I wanted. Seems to just do it. So now where we had 77,151, blah, 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 we now have 79,466. If we did a test report now, it's a budget report, so I just don't think we have anything but just a test report. Yeah, so the budget report's not going to be that important because we haven't run the budget yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the budget now and see if it'll do anything. I'm just not completely sure it will. If I don't have in this batch the override calculation order, I believe it will not run. I just can't remember. So let's click on this. Yeah, you're required, I think, to put something in there. Cycles to use for flat amounts, I'll just say 24. But I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that in there, see if it'll go. Okay, so it seemed to do it. So what the system is computing, as you can look right here, this is fine, is the total budgeted expense is $82,269.88, comprising of the new rate, $79,000, plus this budgeted expense. If I click on that field, it'll break it out by the dental benefit, which looks probably about right. The medical benefit looks low. In other words, I think that dental benefit of $1,007 is probably 24 of whatever it is. So 1007, I'm on a different screen, 04 divided by 24 was $41.96, which I suspect is what a per pay period amount is. You can see these guys don't seem right to me. This doesn't seem right. And this is probably correct, you know. So if you think about it, now again, I have no retirement on here, so this is going to be an issue for you guys in Ohio. We have to figure out how to get retirement on there. But to at least get those guys running, put that same step in. So if I were to, let's go back to the dental one just real quick, and navigate, calc order. I'm just going to try to get that step in my copy buffer. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing now for the medical. I'm not sure what it is. Yeah, it's this one right here. Okay. Just trying to show you how this stuff works. Navigate, calc method, steps. I'm going to drop that last step in at the very last time. This doesn't cause any issue if you're not running, you know, these processes. It only does it on these specialized processes. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this now. I'm going to go ahead and calculate the budget again. And I'm going to look at that 2803 and see if it increases. Oh, big time. Big time. Big time. Which makes much more sense. The RX, the 403B, those are all flat amounts. They all need those steps. They'll all then work correctly. Those are pretty straightforward. The Medicare is probably correct. It's probably taking 1.45. Now, I don't see FICA. Is that because I think we don't do FICA? I think that's the reason. So I guess the question is, what will we do for the retirement? I guess, why isn't the retirement working correctly and so forth? Does this person even have retirement? I don't know any of that stuff, so I'm going to go to the employee card. And I'm going to go look just, I guess, to her ledger entries. Just kind of look and see what I see. Payroll ledger entry, and let's go to the last pay cycle that we ran. Filter for this value. STRS board. So STRS board didn't compute anything. And I just got to look at see how this calculates. STRS board, navigate, calc method, steps. Don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about this. Dan, are you here?
Yep.
Do you have any idea why maybe the STRS board didn't calculate in my budgeting exercise? I used the blank calc order, so clearly it's in the scope. I'm thinking it's this guy right here. You know, I'm realizing that may be the flaw because this guy right here is probably connected to retirement category, you know?
Right.
So the retirement category is all earnings and benefits in which STRS earn is in the category filter. And what I'm thinking is if I'm thinking about this code, I'm thinking that maybe it doesn't actually take that in consideration. In other words, it doesn't bring it into the fake record it's doing.
Right.
And therefore,
because we had to, or you wrote this special stuff for the retirement, and so it's
well, but I don't think that would be it. I would just think that it's just there's a place in the code where it creates this record right here, you see, and I think this is the reason because those two lines of code, because we're basically assigning those values, we're not validating in those values, which then in turn is not bringing in all the related stuff, which in this case is the retirement category. So therefore, there's no basis in which it comes to zero. That's why it doesn't drop in. So I guess we need. This is a little bit more complicated, Bill, I'll write you, Bill, the verbiage for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I know what to do. So update. Yeah, because I think what's happening is that it's not in consideration of the fact that we need that to validate in, because in this validation, it brings in that retirement category, Dan, and that in turn would allow that to have worked. Mm-hmm. So in other words, when we're at this spot right here, let me just kind of close this up. Where am I? Whoops. There we go. And I am getting low on my little headset here, so I'm going to switch real quick. Hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Getting beeps in my ear from my battery-powered headset, which has been having some problems lately. So let me go back to this. Sorry about that. So I think, Brenda, what I'd have to say to you is that when we do the budgeting side of this, it's not going to pick up the retirement until we make a change in our 11th release, which we'll take care of. Because I think it's now obvious to me that that's all I need to do is just to get in. And this is a good one to test with, Bill. So I'll write you that and send you that after this meeting. So to continue on, though, one of the things that's interesting about this budget data before you actually send it over to the general ledger is that people want to analyze it. And one of the things that we did is if you click on it and click even deeper, you can go to the GL distribution. So let's actually take the earning. Let's just take the total budgeted. So that shows me the earnings. That shows me the expenses. Let's just pretend all this data is right. And let's just say there's, the data, I'm just seeing the data for just the one record I'm on. The default batch, actual versus budgeted, this employee, teacher, this date. That's kind of what that filter means. So if I click on GL distribution, it now shows me all this information. And I just want to show you that what a lot of people are doing is we put a ton of fields out there, a ton of fields. And we did all that because then we can add them all. And remember, this is with lots of employees, lots and lots of employees. Then people do this. So now you're seeing all the raw data, if you will,
And again, this data is kind of in a funky way. I mean, I got it in a weird order. But it's basically the GL account level, the GL account string, allocation number, class code, teacher. I've got employee location, employee number, employee name broken out. I've got all kinds of stuff this is data that's coming from the main line, the parent basically, and so forth and so on. I mean, the actual individual amounts we saw earlier, they're all right here. So people like to farm this. They like to get at this table. They bring it over to Excel. They run Jet against it. They do modeling. They do all kinds of graphs and stuff from it. So it's a lot of important mining that can be done at this level. So I just want you to know that that's one of the secret back ends to the way this whole thing is put together. This is all the budgeting exercise. So when I'm finally finished with all this data and I'm happy with it, my next step would be to possibly go ahead and copy it to the budget system. And that came up on the wrong screen, but there you go. So here I can pick the budget template, and I can pick a batch. And I'll put it into original. That's fine. And I'll call this test. Posting date 07/01/15. Creating summary or detail. I'll do it in detail for the fun of it. And we'll call it detail. I don't know, whatever. And I have to balance the entry if I want to. And generally you would want to balance it. You do want to balance it by fund. So I'll go ahead and just balance it to I'll make up an account. I'll pick cash. Whoops. We'll pick business. I'm just making stuff up. I don't know if this is filled in or not. That'd be something you guys would know. So we'll click a button. Posted date must be between whatever. So that is a real issue. That is controlled by the general ledger, by the general journal, by the budget, and in the default batch, you actually have, I think you have dates. Don't you have dates on here? Post number series.
It's under general ledger down under budget and budget
right
plans.
It's right there, right? It's this dude here. Yeah, this dude.
Yeah, you have to go to the budget plans.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to 15 and 16. Just give me a second to do it, guys. There we go. All right. All right. So am I here at that same screen still? Yeah. I've got a record. This is the record that's sitting in the journal. Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say, I didn't think I went directly to it. All right. Payroll, tasks. Sorry about that. But it's good things that these things fail because it kind of shows you where you're getting caught. Create. Hopefully it saved all those settings. Thank God it did. Invalid account. Do you think it created the entry, Dan? I don't know if it did or not.
Don't know if it did or not. I don't know if that's on. We made some changes the other day to the.
Nah, it didn't. It didn't. You could probably give me a valid string, right? Let's see. What would be a valid?
Is this your offsetting account?
Yeah. Do you have an offset for me?
Yeah. Typically, I've been offsetting everything against the fund balance, so.
Okay, let me do that. So we'll go back, budget worksheet, create, and we'll go.
And it's account 0330.
And I'm gonna make.
And then everything else is zeros, yeah.
How's that look?
Yeah.
Take it. Look at that. Finally. All right, good. So we'll go ahead and close that now. Go over to our general journal.
Did that clear the workspace? It doesn't clear the workspace.
No, it has nothing to do with the workspace. The workspace is still there. If you were to run it again, it would go ahead and just do it again. It just would create more entries at the end of the journal. There we go. And actually, that description that we put in there, it's interesting because it's not using the description. Remember, it asked me for a description. I'm not gonna put that in a work order and fix that, but it shouldn't even allow you to even put in a description because I posted in detail, not in summary. So you can see in detail what it does. Okay. So that's what it does. That description is only relevant when you're summarizing, and so forth and so on. So we get that idea. Then we would post our budget, and the budget would be in for about 80% of the entire company's expenditures, and they're thrilled, and everybody's thrilled, and everybody's happy. When they post, how they do that is obviously up to them. There's a lot of issues internal. This is mainly a finance exercise at this level. One thing to note, though, is that, again, things that you are modeling. You're modeling, let's say, the retirement going up the board level by 1 percentage point. It's not going to do that unless you get the data out there. So that means, since you're employee rate driven, you guys may need to import in, export out, and import back in rates effective 7/1 that are the 1% higher. You can always delete them later on. You delete your filter, release your filters, set a filter, select all, and delete all. So it's not like they're really there, but they kind of need to be there. The system is leveraging the real payroll calc. And so it's based on real data that's really there, whether it's new brackets and or rates. So just want to keep that in mind. And again, we had this issue with the retirement, but we'll go ahead and fix that. All right. So in terms of, just following this through again, we have the get the jobs, we create the new rates. The create longevity pay actually is a program that generates and creates the jobs in the first place. So it'll actually just, instead of getting the jobs, it will actually create the jobs, if you will. And it will go through our longevity table to say that if you've worked here a certain amount of time and all this other stuff, your longevity is based on this, that, and the other. It's kind of a bunch of stuff. And we can certainly talk about it, but if you don't have a distinct longevity program in any of these districts in Ohio, it's kind of an academic conversation. Longevity is a very mature process in North Carolina and other places, but I'm just not sure in Ohio. So if you do have longevity requirements, Brenda, bring them to us and we'll work through this. I'm just not sure. Are you familiar with longevity, Brenda?
We haven't.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, longevity is usually what it means is that after a certain amount of service, 20 years, 25 years, people get longevity pay, and usually it's either embedded in their normal pay or it's paid kind of one time a year. Often it's paid one time a year right before the holidays. So it's really a benefit that people give to people that can hang around those kids for that long. It's sort of like, getting paid penalty box for that long. So that's really what longevity pay is. Create new jobs is interesting. So let's just say you wanted to spin through, and for a range of employees, go ahead and create a job for everybody, if you will. And so you can create like a supplemental job in a mass basis for people and so forth, and that's what this purpose is. So it's really, you don't have a job you're rolling from. You actually want to create, new jobs from scratch, if you will, using this tool. So this tool now has another benefit, which is a front-end job loader. So it also has that benefit, and that's what this tool helps you with, as well. So that's good to know. And create new allocation is kind of in conjunction with that. So you create new jobs, you can go on each line, create a new allocation that's specific to each one. It's based on a sheet of paper you might have on your side there. So that's kind of where that is. But you can click that anytime you want. It will go ahead and replace the allocation. And I think it needs to be blank. Yeah, one thing it needs to do is it needs to start out blank. So right now this allocation's filled in. If I were to blank it out, then it would allow me to create a new allocation, and that'd be fine. If I want to just show the allocation, I can just click that button. It'll show the allocation. So that's always something that you have at your fingertips, as we always pretty much make screens like that easily available to you. Just going through the rest of this before we do the post. Clear batch will just blow all these records out. Additional new pay. So if you roll the additional pay over, but want to edit a few of them, you just click on here and you would just enter that, and that would be that. So we don't have any set up, but you could say department head, curriculum head, whatever. And again, an additional pay is all about adding an amount to the annual amount for doing other things, but still part of their main job, and it's going to go through their main allocation. If you want a different GL allocation, it's probably not additional pay. It's probably a different job. So that's how we use sort of the criteria, if you will, the questions we ask. There is a report here, the budget report. So I'll go ahead and run that, see what it looks like. I don't know that report that well myself. This report doesn't quite look right, Mr. Bill. It's missing the name of the district. Yeah, it's got a technical problem. Yeah, you've just got this is a problem that's just because when they rolled it over from the previous release, nobody's visited this report, and they just got a technical problem, missing header information. So if you could just I'm going to give you the object ID and just put a work order out there to fix missing header information for report. I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Report 57085549. It's called Payroll Salary Budget. Hold on, is that right? Yeah. That's a report, yeah. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good, yeah. So if you could just say missing header information for report 37085549, Payroll Salary Budget. That's a good thing for Chablis, quickly to fix. That'd be the kind of thing you may want to throw over to him.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right, so the report, presuming is going to look good. Obviously, nobody's run that lately. Then if you do want to post it, remember that flag that said block old job. Now, I can flip that flag, okay? So just so you see, I can flip it, but that's where this is a piece of data now that got set based on the get current jobs and how you answer that block old job on post. And so at this point, you can't interact with that. Right now, if I do this, the job will be set up for next year, but the old one will be still unblocked. Let's go ahead and post it, and we'll see what it looks like. So when it does post, now it will delete the data. That's what Dan was saying. He thought maybe the budgeting was when I actually created the budget journal lines, it would delete the data. But no, that's not the case, Dan, because that really wasn't the design. The design of post really was meant to roll and create new jobs. That was the design. So I can see why you asked that question, though, and why it can be a little confusing. Because we're using this for 2 different purposes. That's what makes it a little bit hard to explain in some ways. I'm doing a lot of clicking I shouldn't be doing. Just click on the jobs. Okay, so you can see the teacher job is showing down here. And again, we're sorting by date, and then that shows the teacher job down there. And again, as I said before, you can get it so the teacher job show together. It's a payroll setup to control how this view is defaults. Again, it basically would look something like that, if you will, versus that. So anyway, so if I go to the new job, which is non-blocked, not blocked, but not marked as active. Why is it not marked active? Because, well, we haven't gotten to that date. On the day you walk up to the computer and it's 8/31/15, that checkbox will move down. It's not a real checkbox, it's a pseudo checkbox. Basically just finding the default job for this employee's card, which is teacher, and then what is today's date relative to this. If I were to change my work date to 12/31/15, as an example, and click on jobs again, it moved. Voila, because now it thinks I'm actually on 12/31/15. If I click this job, then I'll have all the settings that you saw, all that stuff will show up at this point, and so forth. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. No retro, though. So anyway, and I love Linda's idea of saying, well, how can I just use retro for those few days in which the person got paid in the last pay period, and I missed it because the paperwork kind of floated.
Andrew, since you've changed your work date now, if you go to that employee and run an estimated payroll, all the new, everything associated with this current pay in the new year would be also shown.
Yeah, but you can see right there, it tells you what data it fought through.
Yeah.
So, yep, that's all the new data right there. So the retirement is going to kick in here, because this is leveraging a normal payroll. What I'm doing with this bizarre payroll is that I'm just bringing in this record, but not articulating that record, this record, which is then causing the rest of it to go off the rails slightly. So I'll send a note to Bill, and we'll get a work order there to fix that and fix that report and fix fault to salt or whatever the heck it was, or fault to flat. We'll fix that for sure. Yeah, one thing I just want to say with that salary budget tool that I do know is sort of a flaw is And really, I don't know if I have an answer to it. And it's a design issue, and it's an issue I feel like I should at least bring up, which is this, that when the system is doing this budget, it's only looking at that one job at that time in terms of earnings. And then it computes the rest of it, the expenses. So that's great for a person who's just nothing but a teacher, and it's all great. But if the person has truly normal budgeting earnings that you're interested in looking at across two jobs, or the end of the conversation we had earlier with Tina, where we were talking about, the fact that they, work half 3 hours a day in the cafeteria and three hours a day they're a bus driver, right? So when you're doing this and let's say you're budgeting both of them, what's going to happen? So based on my sense of what's going to happen, I know what's going to happen, is that the earnings will be correct. The percentage-based expenses, Medicare and retirement, will be correct. What won't be correct will be the flat amounts. Because in some sense, if you're not careful, and I'm not sure, how easy this will be to manage, it will pick up the flat amount deductions on both times. And if we send it to the General Journal, you've over budgeted your flat amount expenses. Does the issue make sense to you guys?
It does. Can you not control that by creating another calc order that
Yes,
does not
you
have?
can control that, and my answer was going to be that I've given you the trap door, and that's why I even embedded it in the batch header, right? I did it on purpose because I knew this was going to be it's a very, we're getting more people working split jobs than ever. We've been growing up in the K-12 arena for years, and it hasn't been as much of an issue until lately, but it's becoming more of an issue. So yes, you could have batch A be, with calc order A, and of course calc order B, it could be missing those flat amount expenses. The key thing that you want to do is you want to, in your mind, distinguish what I consider to be kind of jobs that are default jobs versus jobs that are supplemental jobs. You need to make that a clean distinction. And so unfortunately, you have bus drivers that do bus driving as a normal vocation, and then you have people that do bus driving as a secondary job, right? And so we need something, something that tells us that this job is secondary or not secondary, so that we can group them in different sheets. So really the issue is less here, Dan. It's really more about here, and it's in this big screen right here that, it'd be nice if we could pivot less on job number and more, jobs that we consider to be main jobs versus supplemental jobs. Because in the supplemental jobs, we don't want the calc order to include the flat amount deductions. It's in the primary jobs that the flat amount deductions need to come into play. Further making this more complicated is that when the system tries to figure out the general ledger effect of these flat amount deductions or expenses, because I'm asking you to try to do it within the primary job, you could have a discrepancy. Let's say you get it perfect, just perfect. Then the question is, well, what do you do when real payroll processes? Do you check that checkbox for that flat amount deduction to say use the default job only from a GL perspective? And do you understand my drift there? So if you were to fix all this and get the flat amount expenses on the default job, or the primary job in this case, and not on the secondary job, and that goes into your budgeting dollars, you probably should be consistent in advising the client to then use default job allocation for those flat amount expenses, accrued medical, accrued whatever, so that you get actual and budget kind of coming in the same account streams. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'd probably one of those things I'm going to have to work through, but
yeah. And it's this screen here that I'm talking about. So if I'm in AC Dental, let's say, and I click on this guy, it's this checkbox right here that's checked right now. You see how it's checked?
Right.
So by that being checked, then I just need to be careful with my calc orders when I'm processing this, not to calc the flat amount deductions on jobs that really are just pure supplemental jobs, but I still want to include them within my budget constructs. And some jobs aren't budgeted. They're just not budgeting certain kinds of supplemental things. Field trips, whatever. They just certainly don't. But some they do. So it's a complex conversation. I haven't really figured out a design to sort of do better than this. The only other way we could do it is to force every job for that employee in the same batch. But people don't really, that's not the style in which they work. They kind of like to break these up into batches, and it's not by people and class of people, it's rather by the jobs. And so they generally have some of the supplemental jobs in different worksheets than the primary jobs. And if they do that, how do I supposed to know all that at the same time? You see, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets complicated. So, yeah, hasn't really been an easy answer. So I've kind of left it for the field to sort of figure out, and the field being you guys, But I do have a lot of tools here, a ton of tools. But the question is, it takes a little bit of thinking to get this really good and proper. And by the way, this has been vetted quite a bit with North Carolina too. They've looked at this and been trained on it and so forth. And so far they're pretty much accepting this as a model that will work for them.
Yeah. Well, if you have a teacher, they're going to probably be, because the class code is attached to the employee and not to the jobs. And so then you could say, I want to run all the jobs for class code of teacher where it's not equal to teacher. Then you'd get that'd be all supplementals. Probably for the most part.
You're saying for teacher. Well, where is teachers? Teacher certified. Let me see. Yeah. So you're saying give me all certified. Where
the
payroll
job is not equal to teacher.
Not equal to teacher. Right.
And then you would get so then you would get supplementals where you'd have to just come up with some kind of logic like that you could do that.
I think the thing is that flat amount deductions, it's sort of philosophical in a sense. Can flat amount deductions be always attributed to the default job from a budget and actual? And if they're willing to say that, then I think we pretty much it's just literally a processing sort of discussion. What order do you do things, and how do you group things, how do you filter things? It's the people that say, no, I really want to provide my actual and take those flat amount deductions and spread them over all this supplemental stuff. And at the same time, I wanted to budget all that simultaneously. That's where I kind of go, oh, my brain is exploding, because it's just really difficult to build it that way.
Right.
So I kind of feel like when you have percent-based expenses, having them be not default job, like Medicare and retirement, makes complete sense to me, you see. But when we get to flat amount deductions, it's kind of weird if you think about it, trying to carve it up over supplementals when they kind of ebb and flow during the year. You know what I'm saying? Because, if they didn't do those supplementals, you still would have the medical plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the retirement is you were going to pay more dollars if they work more, right? So that's why, from a purely accounting and economic perspective, does it make sense to put it to the general ledger based on this arbitrary coaching thing this guy did here? Really, do I really need to attribute part of the medical to that? I don't know. I mean, that's a complex advanced accounting conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping it'll come on the right side to make the software side easier for me.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's this tool in a nutshell, probably in a bigger than a nutshell, pretty much a very long explanation of its power, and it continues to be enhanced. Obviously, now based on what I just found out with the salary update, not considering the retirement code, I'm going to have to let's send it to you, Bill, on that. I'll put that out to you in a few minutes, so you'll get that. You got the other two that we identified. Anyway, so are there any other questions? Brenda, Linda, I'm not sure who's on this call right now. Let me just see who's jumped on. I think Linda's on. So, Brenda, you're still here, and we have George listening in. Hello, George. Haven't talked to you in a while. How you doing? And Chris has been on, and so forth. Anyway, Brenda, are you there? Hey, George.
Yep. Hi, Andrew. I'm here.
How you doing?
Okay.
Good. Good. Yeah, it'll be interesting how Rowan takes something like this salary update worksheet, and uses it effectively. That'll be interesting
This is for.
during their volume. Brenda, you there? I don't want to just hang up on her. Also, she'll come back and go away. At this point, Bill, I